Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am very excited for this conversation that we're about to have. We have some very distinguished panel guests joining us today to talk about the impact of rogue mobile apps and the experience they need to create for their customers and members across their organization. So to get us started, a few housekeeping items. You are all in listen-only mode. If you do have questions and we have time at the end, we will go through them. So please use the Q&A portion of the panel to submit any questions that you may have, and we will look to address them towards the end. I'd like to get started. We'll start off with a round robin of introductions, and we'll start off with Abby.
Hi, everybody. My name is Abby. I'm an application security engineer at VyStar Credit Union.
Great, thank you. And Scott.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Dungan. I am Director of Cybersecurity at First Financial Bank. My area of responsibility is cyber defense, fraud disruption, brand protection, and product security. Glad to be here.
Sounds like you have a very quiet day every day.
Every day.
And Casey.
I'm Casey Pereira, VyStar Credit Union Senior Security Engineer. I've been in information security for over, 10 years, primarily working in brand protection and application security.
Great, we're really excited to have you here today. And last but never least, Mark.
Hey guys, Mark Trinidad. I'm Field CTO here at Allure Security, and I'm here to join you guys, and I'm happy to be here. Let's have a great conversation today.
Wonderful. So, to dive into this, I think one of the things that we all agree upon today is that everyone's mobile devices are basically their primary computer. And at the end of the day, anything that we do that has to do with any type of customer or member interaction has to be optimized and safe within a mobile environment. So one of the things I want to spend some time talking about is, when you think of the concept of creating the best environment for your customers and members, one of the terms I hear regularly is we have to create a frictionless environment for our customers. So I'd like to spend a little time understanding, how you think of what a frictionless environment is, and how you work on defining that type of environment for your members and customers. So who'd like to jump in?
I'll go ahead and get started. So I guess kind of coming from the cyber defense side, the frictionless environment is interesting because that's what the product people want. They want it frictionless for our customers. And I always have to add friction into that. But if I think about it from an experience perspective, really the things that we need to get right for that experience are, as long as I have customer identity kind of locked down and I know that I'm dealing with the person I'm dealing with, that goes a long way to make a frictionless experience within the application.
And when you talk about frictionless, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, do we want to just give a little bit of a definition of what we mean by that? Casey, you want to maybe jump in on that?
Sure. We spend a lot of time on the UX UI experience with, we have a digital team that does a lot of, they take a lot of user feedback and things like that to sort of enhance the experience with our, within the mobile application itself. We do have 100% MFA in our environment. And we also take certain threats or things that we're seeing to sort of enhance those securities over time as well. Other things that we throw out is just password complexity and, streamlining that login process so that it's not super difficult for them, as far as getting frustrated, if it's logging them out or kicking them out, or if they're not getting the, the MFA key or whatever. So we do take a lot of user feedback, I guess, for that. So yeah, just echoing pretty much what Scott said. I mean, we definitely spend a lot of time to try to make the experience, pleasant for them, but also meet our security requirements as well. So.
Great. And I think one of the things, that is helpful for the folks on the call is understanding the collaboration and who you work with across your environment when you look at what are the needs for the customers and the members, right? As you're getting thrown a stack of things you need to execute against, and you're trying to keep it safe. So could you share with us a bit on who you work with and what that looks like across your teams?
Sure. We have a digital team that primarily focuses on, the code and writing, basically pushing out all of the changes. And we have a third-party platform that we have kind of like under the hood, so to speak. So a lot of those changes go through sprints, where they'll do testing and just take any of the, the enhancements that are supposed to be pushed out. They're thoroughly tested and then obviously put out into the wild. So, and we have code security as well, certain products and things that we run those through just to make sure that security also is, intact. So digital team, we use a lot of customer feedback as well. So we have forms and all sorts of member feedback that is provided. We use social media, that kind of stuff. I mean, a lot of those things are pushed to that team, to sort of think about whenever they're pushing out those sprints, so to speak.
And Scott, what about within your organization?
So within our organization, I primarily work with the digital team, the fraud team, our threat intelligence folks, and then the folks who are developing the application. So digital team, obviously, they're looking for that frictionless experience and the voice of the customer. Where we use the fraud team and the cyber threat intelligence or threat intelligence is because we're a financial institution, obviously the goal is to steal money from us or our customers for a bad guy or a bad person. So we're looking at, how are they attacking us and how can I incorporate what I see from what's happening in the environment. How can I incorporate that back into the controls that we have in place? Because I want to disrupt the fraudster, but I don't want to create undue friction for our customers. For example, so if you're doing a low risk transaction, so I'm just viewing a balance, I'm logging in from a known device, viewing a balance, I'm probably going to stay out of your way. But if you're changing things, like you want to change your primary email or a phone number, we're probably going to do some sort of step-up authentication if we don't have assurance that you're on a device that we've seen you on before. But really, it's a collaboration with all those groups internally to give that best experience with the right amount of friction. And if we're experiencing a time of heightened fraud, there's probably going to be additional controls that are out there for everybody just at that time. And we're very upfront about that with our customers. We believe in positive communication. So within the application, there's always going to be some notification of the latest fraud scheme or why you're seeing enhanced authentication.
Great, that's great context. Okay, so you have something else you want to add?
Yeah, I was just saying that's a good call out because we do utilize a lot of the fraud stuff that we see as far as trends to sort of push out quick, and like I said, the 100% MFA and things like that. So we use those trends to sort of beef up the security around accessing the site as well. So.
And do you share that with your stakeholders that are asking you to do things that maybe won't be in line with what's happening out with the fraudsters?
Yeah, I mean, we do push communications on our website if there's going to be any changes that, maybe would make the member, kind of like squawk a little bit. So we do have internal communications as well to let our team know, like, hey, you might experience more call volume and, things like that.
Got it. Great. Are there so we talked about the fact that, you have your digital teams and the other groups you work with for creating that experience for your customers and members. Are there other inputs that come from the business side on other things you all need to take into account as you're looking at creating that experience? Any other pressures or things that, stay top of mind for you?
For me, the biggest thing that stays top of mind is there's always a strategy for the business, right? So there's a goal that the business leaders have, and we have to align with that strategy, right? We have to enable it and not just be the voice of no all the time. So it's a tough balance. You have to keep the customers happy, but then you also have to make sure that the business leaders get their vision executed as they want it to be executed.
So much
Casey,
is hinged on that mobile app too. I mean, like just having that access, I mean, that can really kill your reputation too if you make it really difficult for them to get into, or if they can't check their balances. You know, we are in, I think I mentioned this before, we're in like our customer base is like Navy, so it's very paycheck to paycheck, and they do like to check their money, you know, and it's like that instant gratification. So, you know, that reputational damage can be pretty tough on an institution if you're not able to really provide that seamless experience for them as well.
So that's always hanging over your head as you're looking at anything you're doing of what can I do to make sure I don't create an experience that customers or members will talk about negatively.
Yes, like we try to make security very important, but also, you know, making sure that, you know, that's not going to cause any disruption on their end as well. So.
And that's something that I don't think we've called out in another group, that as far as monitoring what's being said, right? So what are your customers are saying about you on social media, or how are your complaints going? So that's really another group that as I'm sitting here thinking that, or another activity that we do is, you know, what's the perception of the organization? Because Casey's 100% right. If once you get a negative rep, it's kind of hard to recover from that.
I mean, whether it be downtime, anything like that, like if there's a change that maybe people are complaining about, like, why do I have to input all this data just to get into my app, that kind of thing. I mean, we're going to see that on social pipelines, basically. So, and we have our marketing team primarily drives that. And, you know, they'll let us know if they're seeing anything from that nature, but we also have a very layered approach to our brand protection coverage. So we have several different ways of gathering that information. We have some that are keyword searches. You know, if anything hits on that, we're going to know about it. But we look at, you know, all the different social pipelines that are out there to see if they're saying anything negative. It kind of gives us just a leg up of what's going on, or if there's something that we need to be prepped for, or maybe there's something going on with it that we don't know about. So,
well, it's a real-time alert system for you, right? At the end of the day, because people are not shy about sharing their opinions.
No, they are not.
Negative experience, right? And it lives forever once they've had it once. So we sort of started to dip our toe into it a little bit, but I wanna switch gears a little bit and talk a bit more about, you know, as we think about creating these experiences and everyone moving to a more digital environment as they look at doing any type of financial transactions, there's a lot of fear out there across folks of fraud, right? And it's a real fear, right? We know it's out there. And so, you know, what are some of the things that you think about or that keep you up at night when you think about the security concerns or those challenges that, you know, continue to pop up their ugly head and make your days more and more interesting? If you could share some of that, that would be great.
I think he's going to say the same thing. I mean, it's fraud, right? It's the fraud write-off. I mean, it's the hemorrhaging money that, you know, you're basically writing off every time, you know, someone puts in a claim that they've been taken, you know, advantage of, in whether it be an account takeover, or they've sent money through Zelle or Venmo or whatever to some prince or whatever, you know. Like, I mean, there's several things. It's that human element that I don't think that we'll ever, you know, really be able to secure. It's like, you can educate people, you can tell them that was the wrong thing to do, or, oh, hey, we don't push that campaign, or hey, we're never going to call you, you know, for that kind of information. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's really just that fraud write-off. That's a huge amount of money. I know for us, it's something that, and I'd be shocked to hear if this wasn't number one, you know, for any institution when it comes to phishing, typo squats, all that stuff that you're seeing out there, that, you know, that fraudsters are basically just, you know, capitalizing on.
Yeah, but my fear is I'm never as well controlled as I think I am. So in the sense, if we have fraud controls in place, or we have controls in place, what's been my experience is we have skilled adversaries. They understand our business models better than we do, and they know where all the weaknesses are. So if I put controls in place that prevent account takeover, you know, so your traditional, you're giving up your credentials, they pivot to account handover. So now they're tricking people into giving, you know, over their account. So they'll go in, burn their identity at the banking center within the app because it's a real person, and then they'll give that over to somebody at the end of the day. And that's a life-changing experience for them, because that kind of sets them up for bad experience going forward. But it's very difficult for me to defend against that, because everything's real in that scenario, except for now it's fraud activity. So, you know, it's the not knowing what I don't know is what keeps me up at night in the fraud space.
Or what are they going to do today? Yeah.
Right.
So it's very cyclical, but also very tough to, you know, you don't have a crystal ball. and there's also no silver bullet to push all these, to basically ward against these kind of attacks. So.
Right. Well, and there's so much that's happening outside of any visibility that we have, right? It's out in the ether, folks spinning up scams and figuring out how are the additional ways I can help take other people's money from them. We've been seeing a lot of that, across the board, especially around mobile applications where people are impersonating the brand and acting like they are the application of choice for that specific brand. Have y'all had that experience before? Or are there things that you put in place to help identify or to help protect your members from downloading the wrong apps?
I know we communicate that we only push to 2 stores. So, and that's very clear, when we push any updates or anything. And it also, I think it's in our disclaimer also within the app stores as well. We are, like that's pretty clear, as far as we're not going to do we do get a lot of the rogue mobile apps, detections, but I honestly have not dug in all that much. I know Allure is very good at finding those and letting us know about those. But I don't know the monetary sort of I don't want to say return on investment, because I think it's great you guys pick them up very quickly and we're able to look at them and get them offline very quickly as well. But it's hard to say who's downloading those, because from what I've seen, a lot of the downloads or the stores that they're pushing to, these APK sites and things like that, it's kind of like a wide cast. Sometimes people are just trying to play with code, or they're just trying to see what they can kind of do versus trying to fraud a member. So that'd be interesting. I don't know, Scott, have you guys seen any sort of when it comes to, those rogue mobile apps, have you seen a lot of fruition with monetary value to that, or?
So I don't think we've seen, I think it's a tough one. What
Yeah.
we have seen is, if we kind of look at the spectrum over the past 24 months, we have layered controls, right? So, 24 months ago, it was your traditional phishing site, right? So it sits on the web. It may or may not have a URL that is close to what our URL is. What we found at the end is it doesn't matter, that people don't really pay attention to that. But as you have layered controls in place, so folks like Allure were really good at helping us in finding and disrupting those sites. And then we would start to see mobile apps pop up, like you said, in the unapproved stores. And the mobile apps that we found were, I guess we'll say they're our legitimate app, but they were just in the wrong store. And then so we would take a hard line and get those down. The one that's kind of interesting that I don't know what the play's going with it, that we've started to see, is redirects, right? So they'll put a redirect out there and it'll redirect over to the real app store. So it'll be inside of Google, Google Play or the Apple App Store. Those are hard to get down because they're not really the redirect isn't doing anything wrong, and it might not be infringing our brand, but we don't know what the play is yet on those, to be honest.
Yeah, a lot of the play that we see there, Scott and Casey, is really around SEO manipulation. So folks wanting to find your brand, but then getting to the wrong site. And as you can imagine, a lot of those sites are typically used for other cybercrime, malware drops, redirect to bad sites, robots coming up, all these different sort of scenarios that happen there. What we have seen as far as sort of mobile app, I don't think there's from our analysis, maybe not high number of fraud related to like a rogue mobile app being downloaded and injected, but we have seen banking trojans being installed in these sort of mobile apps and repackaged, right? Because it's the same APK package name. The other thing, like you said, Scott, right? It starts with the phishing site and the text message. But if they continue to do that, they can easily shift the message of the text message that says, hey, there's a brand new mobile app download available, go to this site, right? So again, because of the communication going out through these text message channels, it's a matter of when they're going to actually switch from a phishing site now, hey, download this mobile app, which can take over your entire device, and that's everything.
And then kind of one of the things that we've seen, Mark, kind of going off that is, initially it was a one-way communication. You go to you get a text, the SMS message, you go to the fish site, you put your information in. Well, the information they collect basically there's always a phone number, email in there, right? And we can talk about why they do that, but one of the things they do with it is they've started turning around calling people, right? So when the site goes down, they still have all those phone numbers. So now they pretend to be us. And back to nightmare scenario, what keeps me up at night is if one of our customers gets on with somebody and they convince them to download an app, it's our brand that gets the reputation is takes the hit, but it's the customer's now damaged again because they have an application on their device that's not good.
Yeah, I was amazed recently. We, as we go out and meet with customers and prospects across the country, we always check to see what's going on to make sure we're armed and ready to have the right conversations. And just looking at the sheer volume of rogue mobile apps that we find, in preparation for our going to an event or whatever the case may be. I think the last 3 events we went to, out of every one we looked at, it was over 90%. We found, rogue mobile apps representing these brands, and just the sheer volume was overwhelming. And I know it continues to grow and grow, especially as we see more and more of these third-party marketplaces pop up. So I have a feeling, although we may not see all of the damage the way we may have from traditional phishing, we will continue to see the sophistication of what they're going to do in that ability to manipulate using those apps as a way of opening the door.
People put a lot of trust in applications. They do. They expect that if it's on their phone, that it should work properly and that everything's secure. So.
Right. And it's really hard to know if it's real or not a lot of times.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So one of the things, we was going through this conversation, you all have been working tirelessly to come up with the right levels of security that doesn't inhibit your customers and members from engaging. And so as you looked through your requirements for what you needed, right? What were those key requirements that you wanted to have in place no matter what? You talked about a layer approach, Scott. You talked about how we look at that frictionless experience, Casey, and what we need to do. What were those core criteria that, they're non-negotiables when you start to look at what you need in order to keep your customers and members safe?
I mean, it obviously starts with the business requirement, but if I kind of think about it, with the things that I'm passionate about is from an application security perspective, is everything, is the application encrypted? Are the APIs secure? So it kind of starts there. Then you go to the business, they'll have whatever they want to do with the application has to be taken into account. But then the other thing that I think is missing in a lot of discussions, especially when you're talking to your digital team, is you have to say fraud is going to happen. So how are we going to handle that? And that's really the big piece of the conversation that I see always missing in these things is the product people are very sunshiny, everything's happy, right? But you need to get them to what the rainy day scenario is, and how do we handle that? Part of that is how do we take care of our customers when there is fraud, but then how do we employ or deploy companies like Allure to help us with brand protection and just keeping up with what they're seeing in the environment. So, it's being holistic in your approach and not just stopping at a frictionless experience for the customer.
It's great insight. Casey, what about you when you're looking at that brand protection piece that Scott just mentioned? What were some of the requirements that were super important for you?
Security, I work in InfoSec, so of course security is our number one. So, but, we do try to be considerate. We do use a lot of tools, to try to test the code and just make sure that we're, if there's any vulnerabilities that we're handling those things, if any sprint or push that we're putting out there. So that's obviously number one to us. But yeah, it's pretty much the same. I think that, brand protection is very important. It's kind of new, but also, it's always been there. It's just kind of turning into a wildfire now. So, security is number one for us. So but there's lots of things that you have to take into consideration too. I mean, you also have to look at what the need is too. It could be something small, or if it's big, it could be like small, like I wish I could do this in the app, that kind of thing. And then, we try to look at it as like a popularity too, like what can we do without it compromising, like, or opening us up to like, those kinds of takeovers, like the API leaks and all that stuff.
So you mentioned that brand protection has been like a wildfire. Can you expand on that a bit more, on what it is you're seeing, or those things that are again keeping you up at night as far as that's concerned?
I mean, we're in the financial sector, so it's money, right? I mean, that's all that money is. It turns around to it's our jobs. It's like everything that we're working for is just really to make sure that we're keeping everything secure, and that those, for us, fraud write-offs was huge. Like, I don't think that we had a clear view. Like, I've done brand protection for a while, but I don't think we had a clear view of like what the fraud write-off was until probably the last year or two, and really started kind of connecting the dots and then building on those layers and adding more to it. Like what else can we do as far as coverage to react quicker, and I think for us it's really closing that gap. So and that's shout out to Allure, because I think that you guys do a really fantastic job of detection and then also getting things down very quickly, and just the quicker we can take action on those things, like getting them offline and sort of severing that tie or that direct link to the member, the better. So
yeah, you had mentioned in our prep, you talked about aggressive takedown. And that was a core requirement for you, and tying it back to limiting that. So I'd love to ask you, when you talk about aggressive takedown, what is that in your mind? What does that mean?
We're very metrics driven here. We like to, for us, it's like that tie. It's like the quicker we can get those sites down, or the apps down, or anything that's really, copyright infringement, anything that's, mimicking our brand, ad hijacks, anything that's basically a speed bump for the member that's not us, or is like a deterrent, like a I don't know, like a clown or something, when you're somewhere, it's just like something that's a distraction. We like to get those things offline as soon as possible, because really what that is if they're not just targeting one person, it could be many people, but maybe we only have a purview to one person that's actually receiving it. So the thing that is very important to us from a metric standpoint is like, how quickly is that site being detected and how quickly is it going down? So in our kind of like a background, I mean, we also have notifications for any sites that are spun up that would have our name or anything like in there. So, we kind of line that up to our detection services as well. So how quickly did we get that information? How quickly did the service get that information? And then turn around, how quickly did they get it down? So, and all of that is time. Time is money. So as soon as, like if we are aware of that site within an hour, you have to think of how many people did they spray it to, how many people fell subject to that, and then again, tie it back to a dollar figure. So, which is really, really hard to do in this space, because you're not going to know unless somebody calls and tells you. And a lot of the times people feel shame when they do this. They're like, oh my gosh, I fell for that. Or I can't believe I gave my member information, out. And a lot of people just absorb it and don't call and let us know. But I'm really big on lessons learned and collaborations and just talking about it. And like, what am I not seeing that you're seeing? What are the trends that are out there that maybe we haven't experienced yet?
And I think that's super important. Scott, you talked a lot about that as well, that the especially within this community, right, where literally a minute can mean a lot of lost money for your company and your members, right, and your customers. You had talked about the need for that community to come together and share what they're seeing, how they're seeing.
Right.
You want to expand a bit more on how you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like Casey said, we developed kind of a metric based on what we saw. So we were able to get to for every site that stays up, we could we could estimate this would be the loss for that. So we kind of use that as a savings metric. But as we went through that process, one of the things that I developed is a consistent set of rules. So we're always aggressive on takedown. We're super loud. They know that it's us. Like, I don't give away my partners on the back end, but they know when I go look at their site that it's me looking at their site, and they know they're going to go down. But once they go down, the concern is, do I just want to outrun the bear, or do I want to help everybody else outrun the bear? So what we would do is we would start seeing who else is being attacked by this fraud actor. And if I had positive evidence of that, we would reach out to those financial institutions and then kind of come alongside of them and give them some tips like, hey, you know, this is what we're seeing. This is how we've been successful. Because a lot of we're a regional bank, but there a lot of the folks that we were helping were smaller than us. So we're $18 billion. So, but we would talk to somebody that's a $1 billion bank, $2 billion bank that has one person in security. So, you know, kind of arming them with, here's what the bad guys are doing to you. Here's how you can disrupt that. Was really important to us because I mean, I felt bad just like if all I'm doing is outrunning the bear and letting all these little other folks kind of get consumed. Didn't really feel like a very good community play to me.
Yeah,
That's
lessons
great.
learned. Lessons learned is so
learned.
important.
Well, and I think across this community, it's really important that we share what we see and continue to be very open and transparent, even if, you know, at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're protecting our company, but we want to make sure we're protecting people, right? At the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to.
I mean, and the fraudsters do it too, because if you go to TikTok, all you're going to find is people rapping about how to wash checks and it's a blessing every day. I mean, there's a kid, he's like 10, 12 years old, and he's got this channel with thousands of followers. And so they're telling their community how to fraud people. So we need to tell people how not to get caught.
We need to step up our game.
Humans unite. Yeah, like-
Yeah.
Right? Oh my goodness. Mark, are there other things that you're seeing out there that our panelists haven't touched on when we think of some of those risks that we're seeing?
I think they touched on a lot that we're seeing. I think the other big thing that we're seeing that sort of goes since the beginning, right? They talked about, you know, aligning with the business objectives, and a lot of the banks and credit unions I talk to are all about meeting the customers and members where they want to be, and that's that digital experience. So there's even more of an urgency to meet them there, right? Because the younger generations, they want a mobile app and they want to have the information, as Casey mentioned, immediately. But they're also grew up with technology, so they might be even, you know, more risk averse to say, okay, I'm going to click on this link, and you know, they might get phished that way. So there's a lot of different things that go on as far as trying to meet folks in the middle and trying to provide that frictionless and experience, and just having them be able to have a place where they know it's going to be good, because they can easily jump ship to another place, right? There's a lot of new services that are out there that are online only, and they'll just jump there. If there's a high yield savings somewhere that your bank or credit union doesn't offer, they'll easily go there. It's online there, right? So you have to pick and choose, right? Align with the business on what they want to do, and make sure that they're doing something great, secure, and protecting the brand that way.
That's a great point, especially as we have generations now that are purely digital native and really have expectations that go above and beyond what we could ever imagine. So I want to shift gears a little bit. We talked a lot about what keeps you up at night. We talked about what it is, you know, you need to deliver for your business, as well as what's important to you as you look at creating that frictionless experience. I want to shift a little bit. You know, you all chose Allure Security to help you in this journey. I know that, you know, Casey, you spent time really trying to find a lot of this stuff on your own. And I'd love if you could share sort of your experience before you came to Allure, both of you. What was your day-to-day like? What is it like on your teams? And what did that cause you from a stress level perspective?
It was very stressful. So like, we have been through a couple different vendors over the years. You know, we onboarded, we used one of the bigger names out there initially. And I think that the focus just shifted as we were starting to see, you know, like more listening to the member. So that voice of the member mentality. What I started was, we have an inbox for our customer base, or our members, to, like, if they come into a branch, or if they call the contact center, if they email, if anything, any sort of communication that they have with VyStar, that we have our contact customer, like basically our customer reps, that they can send it to that email address, and then I can investigate it further. So as you guys know, because you did a great write-up about it, like September of last year, it was just like a tidal wave of these websites that were being spun up, and it was really tough. We did not have the proper coverage for that, but that was on the vendor that we were with at the time, and seeing that sort of comparison between the two of what I was seeing from what our members were reporting, and then doing that sort of triage and forensics on those sites themselves, and then again establishing the trend. And it was a lot of work. I have a huge spreadsheet of just like what I was mapping out for trends, and then working with fraud, and then just trying to understand like how can we get on top of this. So really just like looking at the trends and trying to adapt to them was something that became very important to us. And I was juggling a lot at the time. So I was not only doing like brand protection full time, I was also doing vulnerability management for our credit union, which I don't recommend to anybody. So, so stress was high. Stress was very high.
Pick one. Just pick one.
Yeah. So I then shifted to just member facing. So that's basically what I'm doing. So I rely heavily on what I'm seeing from trends. So that collaboration, like, like opening up and speaking with Scott and other institutions that are kind of, I guess, dealing with the same thing, but also staying on top of trends. Like I subscribe to a lot of different, media sources to know what's out there or what may be coming in the forefront. And then also listening to your member base. I think a lot of people, like you have to sort of put a lot of trust in your customers. Like they do gripe a lot, but they're also going to give you a lot of use cases, like what they're seeing, what, you can use those to your advantage. I know that everything that I provided, to Allure is like, what could be better, or like, I'm a use case person. I'm like, this is what we're seeing. Like, how can you guys detect it better? Or, if you are detecting it, how can we do it quicker? Or you just really I like that collaboration, that open-ended, experience with a vendor that's willing to work with us too on what we're seeing and how they can react to it quicker as well. Because at the end of the day, it's all fraud, it's all money, and no one likes to lose. Do you like losing? I don't like losing money. So, that's the goal. We're all in this together, and yeah. So it was very. What I liked the most about Allure was their quickness. Like I know it was explained to me very heavily what you guys use. Your tool base, and it just was nice to see that everything that I had found, it lined up 100% with what. Like everything I was finding in the wild on my own lined up with what you guys detected and provided to me. So it was like a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow.
It was validation for you. All that work on that spreadsheet was worth it.
Yeah.
So Scott, Casey mentioned that she had switched from another vendor who shall not be named.
Yeah.
What was your experience as you were going through, I guess what we call the tidal wave of attacks that happened this past year?
Yeah.
How are you handling that?
So if we kind of go, and for us, it started this is 25. So we'll say September of 23, the tidal wave hit. There was stuff before that, but that was really kind of the crucible that threw us into the fire was September 23. It really ramped up. So if I kind of look at where we were then, one thing is we had a disjointed strategy in the sense that fraud ran some stuff, cyber ran some stuff, the business wasn't talking to anybody. So internally, we were coming with 3 silos. But we were responsible for brand protection in the cyberspace. So we had vendors, a vendor there that really wasn't hitting the mark. So it was kind of spotty on detection. And then the thing that really, really stunk was takedown, right? So we would identify something either through sharing within the community from FSISAC or members reporting into the call center. So I've got good data, like this is bad, take it to my brand protection partner, and 6 days later, the site's still up. That is unacceptable. I mean, if this thing's not down in a day, or if you can't give me a good reason why it's not down in a day or less, that's not acceptable. So, Allure kind of helped plug that gap, right? And then their detection, I can't really say enough good things about the detection there at the beginning. There were times we were finding 4 to 6 sites to take down a day, and I say it was Allure. So, they've got whatever the secret sauce is for detection. It's pretty good. But what really has been nice with that journey is going from this disjointed, siloed approach to where everybody's together. So the business, the vendors, fraud, you know, BSA, AML, all the teams, we talk every day. So there's a fusion now, right? And I would include Allure in that fusion because I know I was probably a big pain in Mark's backside for a while because I was like, hey man, you guys need to get better at this. But they always, you know, everybody got better coming out of that process, including the bad guys. But we were able to shut them down every time they pivoted. We were able to close them down. So coming together is really the key for the past 2 years for me.
Very important to have open communication with other departments too, because yeah, if you're not working together, then the effort is just lost. So
Right. Well, and you had mentioned earlier in our conversation that there was like a Frankenstein approach on how you guys looked at this, right? There was a product that did well in this space. There was a product that did well in this space, but there was really no product that actually looked at it the way that you guys needed to. Scott, you did a great transition for me, so thank you for that. You mentioned that you were a pain in Mark's backside, and Casey, at one point, you said the same thing.
he won't
so
admit
what
it, but I
I'd like
know
to
it.
spend a little time on is, you know, share what it's like working with Allure Security. I mean, obviously, Mark has the patience of a saint, according to your experiences. So, but if you could share with me, you know, what's it been like?
I'll start. Is they're very responsive. So what I appreciate about the relationship is they're, you know, y'all are open to feedback. So if it's praise, we've had some good examples where I've shared some stuff where the fraudsters have given up, and I know the team got tickled with that because, you know, the fraudster pretty much said they gave up. So, you know, we can celebrate the wins together, but then when things get difficult, they've never backed down from those tough conversations. You know, we experienced a time where it was either a bulletproof hosting provider that we were having difficulty with, or registrations in a country that will remain nameless for this call. That, you know, I would have hard conversations with Allure, but you're always open to it. And at the end, we always found a solution, and the solution was quicker takedowns. And however we got there, is how we got there.
That's great.
Totally
Casey, what
agree.
about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. I like the quickness is obviously very important. You know, just like getting them down very, very fast is the key for us. And that's really what sold us 100% on that, was from, you know, just seeing how much effort it was just to do it as a human, one person, you know, trying to, you know, like, I guess, put the flames out, so to speak. It's like, you know, having someone that's actually really responsive and able to do the work that you've been, you know, been desperately trying to do, you know, seamlessly is very important. I know that you guys have also, I'll give a shout out to you for enhancements. Like, I threw a lot at you guys for, like, I would love to see, here's my list of 900 things. So, and it's, you guys have always been very open to, you know, to putting in those enhancements, or at least working on them, or entertaining. And then also just being very clear, like, we can't do that, or it's just not something that we have on the roadmap yet, or whatever. So I think, you know, just prioritizing your needs and everything is also, you know, just being really, I don't know, realistic about what your needs and wants are. And then, you know, I just think you guys you're great. You're a very responsive team, and I know that I bug a lot. So I, you know, and I also give a lot of use cases too. So, I mean, you have to, I think it's important too, from a customer standpoint, like, we are like there to help you as well. You know, like, if you're not listening to you know, who your customers are, to build on your product, then, you know, it's a loss for you. So, and I think you guys do a really good job of just staying open-minded and listening to your customers, and then applying that feedback as well.
Sounds very similar to what you do with your members, right? Listening to them and taking their
Mhm.
feedback and making enhancements. Mark, I'm going to flip it over to you for a little bit. You know, as you were working with Casey and Scott, what was that experience like? What did we learn? And what, you know, has that partnership been like from your perspective?
I think the partnership has been great. I think what we learn all the time is they're the front line, right? Really. So they're going to have that understanding of what the actual member, what the actual customer is seeing, what is happening in other areas of the credit union or bank, right? Said they work with fraud and AML, right? There's going to be, all of these things are associated with one another, whether it be a phishing attack, account takeover. So having that understanding that we get from them is only going to make sure that we have that option to enhance certain things, right? We're going to understand a little bit more of like, oh, if you're seeing threat actors that are going after you, not just in the phishing attack, maybe they're going after you in other sort of attacks, right? That's going to help us really understand what do we need to be aware of, where do we need to look, where do we need to enhance, and that really helps us really pivot on what we can do as far as providing the best services that we possibly can. I think the other thing is that threats are always changing, right? The threat landscape is always changing, and to have people right there that are experiencing that and bringing that back to us will help us get even better detections, right? We'll have to pivot on the things that we're doing, right? Hey, we know that the threat actors, using this now. We know that rogue mobile apps are appearing on this site now, right? So that all collaboration, I think what a lot of people sort of forget is it doesn't matter if you're a credit union, doesn't matter if you're a bank, doesn't matter if you're a vendor. We all should be sharing that information because again, we're trying to protect each other. We're trying to protect the member, trying to protect the customer, and we're trying to save that money, as Casey mentioned.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Before we open it up to some questions that we've had put into the chat, as you look at brand protection, where it is today, as Mark mentioned and Scott mentioned and you mentioned, Casey, it just continues to evolve, right? There's different technologies coming out, AI, all different things are just making it a lot easier. And there's rap songs about how to commit. What advice, like what are some lessons learned that, that you could share with our listeners that will help them maybe prevent or avoid some of the learnings that you had the hard way, or things that would help to accelerate their journey along this brand protection, ever-changing landscape?
I would definitely say just, stay open-minded, because if you're not really like leaning in and studying what they're doing and then, like keeping track of the trends that you're seeing, it's kind of tough to stand. I also strongly recommend layering your approach, like working with other departments on what they're seeing. And like I said, just creating an inbox, for those reports may seem simple, but it really saved our life, when we were experiencing all of those websites that were coming in, those fake websites. So, and it gave us more of like to me, it's like, you have to have, when you're trying to figure out what you're going to, do next as far as layering your approach, you have to have that data to sort of support that as well. So, whatever way you can get it, take it and run with it. And then, like I said, stay very open-minded. And then there's so many tools out there, so really just like kind of trying to figure out what your landscape is, like what is your protection model look like what are you trying to achieve, and then just bolting on from there. So, and then again, sign up with Allure because they're really zippy fast on getting your takedowns completed. So harmless plug. So
Hey, we'll take it. We're not shy. It's all good. Scott, how about on your side?
Really, I mean, it kind of echoes what Casey said. The big thing is if you're siloed internally, so if you don't know who your brand, if your digital team is, you probably need to go find them and take them by coffee and go out to find out what's their roadmap look like. So, bringing everybody together, and I like the word fusion. So, all the people that protect the organization that have a play in this, you bring together. All your product people, you bring them together. So talking is important. Never meet with a vendor without a buddy. So the thing that is, I think it's been a key lesson for our line of business here is, if you meet with a VISA or maybe I shouldn't name names, but you meet with somebody, right? You're meeting with the salesperson that's going to say, sure, our product is the best ever. We have the best security. Maybe you should get a second opinion and not just take their word for it. So, being present in all the conversations that you need to be present in, and then having a good partner to help with your brand protection is important. Obviously, I like Allure. I tell people about Allure, so that's part of our strategy. But it has to be multifaceted too, right? So it's not just Allure, because as the bad guys get better at their job, Allure might not detect them as well as they do today. So, a multi-layered approach is only prudent. But.
So one thing I did want to actually ask as we go through this conversation, and it just popped into my head. So apologies for the on the off the cuff question here. You mentioned the fusion of the different groups, and you mentioned the importance of bringing everybody else along. One of the things we hear frequently is that, it's all cyber's job in order to do that. And it's all cyber's funding in order to keep our brand safe. Or, getting everybody to throw in 3 cents across each department to do it seems to be challenging sometimes. How did you look at building that business case and bringing people along and having it not sit 100% on your shoulders, both from an implementation perspective, but also from just, we're all trying to make all of our money stretch as far as we can. Were there ways in which you partnered with other teams, or, how did it work with your organization? Totally threw that out of left field, I know.
That's okay.
Do you want to go, Casey, or I've got an
sure.
answer,
I mean,
but don't want to. Okay.
I can quickly answer and then you can build on it. For us,
Okay,
it was working with fraud, like knowing what that monetary value was, or, what that cost perspective was, like how bad is it, and, getting those trends in place. And, from there, like I said, it's just example. It's, getting all of like your landscape together and knowing what all you're trying to work against, that was really important.
Yeah, it's really being able to go from feelings to facts, so what's my cost? And that's how we built credibility. Is we disrupt, because you're creating friction, Scott. I disrupted fraud, and here's how much I saved the organization from disrupting the fraud. So once you're part of that value proposition and you've got some credibility behind that, and you consistently do that, you always bring facts and not feelings. It just kind of falls in place at that point. And then one day you'll wake up and the business will say, well, we were going to do this, but we decided we need to put a multi-factor on it because it's high risk. And then you just feel like
you feel vindicated. You're
validated.
Like, yes, they actually were listening.
Yay,
Oh my gosh,
people are
awesome.
listening.
That's awesome.
Yep.
So I just want to look and see in our Q&A before we say goodbye today. Looks like Brian had some questions around what we're doing for our product roadmap and things as we move forward around different types of scams, which I think we'll take that one offline with you, Brian, because I think there's some other things we can be sharing around that. And then the other question was, how are some of the bank credit unions panelists educated members? I'm not sure I understand that question, Brian. So if you maybe want to try restating that, if you're still out there. Maybe he's not. Nope, he's still there. Well, we can take that one offline too, as well, just to make sure that we're answering your question fully. But if you want to add a little bit more color, that would be great. Oh, here we go. He just came back. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. So how are you educating your members on fraud, right? That human piece that you talked about earlier, Casey. What are those things that you guys are doing?
We do push notifications. We'll do a banner on the webpage or something like that, but we keep it pretty broad because we also don't want to invoke fear. Like, we don't want them to be like, oh my gosh, they're taking over VyStar or whatever. So, and that's a lot of the reason why we react to or have a fine, like, I guess like a microscope on the social media posts and things like that, because we don't want people to get that fear, that like something bad is happening. So if we see enough, like for instance, I'll try to think of an example, for, I think it might have been Zelle or that account takeover, we minimized the dollar amount that you could actually do for those external transfers. And then those companies that were also working, that like Pereira and things like that, we pressed them to increase their security on things based on the trends that we were seeing. So we do put together a lot of intel, and we also become very annoying, about like, this is what we're seeing, this is bad, and you guys, it would be, beneficial for you guys to maybe take a look at this. So yeah, we just never stop knocking on the door. So
you put it back on like the whole chain of vendors that help you with every aspect from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, we're the customer, if you think about
Yes.
it, it's like we're paying for a service, or if we're collaborating with you, then you need to have an open mind. You need to be able to listen to us as well. So, it's a couple different steps into it. A member tells us, we tell the vendor, and, so on and so forth. But, we will, it's tricky too, because the member education portion of it, like we do have things on our websites, our website in general that, education, and things like that. And we'll also, I know for me, like when I'm manning that phishing inbox, and if somebody reports something, I will always respond back to say, like, this is the best way you can respond to them. One, we'll never reach out to you to ask for this sort of sensitive information. We're just not going to grab that information over the phone. We have several different tactics for MFA, and people who have called in, and some people are familiar with it, but then you have this new generation that it's, they're like, why would you need to call me, or what are you doing? It's like, it's very confusing for them as well. So, we try to keep it, pretty broad, that like we're not going to reach out to you for sensitive information, and that we're always going to text you with a short code. So we try to educate them when we're in, like in real time with them, so that they're aware of it. And if it's really bad, we do push banners to our webpage.
Great.
Yeah, what
about
I was
you,
going to
Scott?
say is we tailor our message based on what we're seeing. So fraudsters, they don't do things just to do things. If they're collecting information off of a page, they're doing it for a reason. And if you don't understand the reason, you really need to go think about it or talk to your fraud people. So we use that as the basis to form exactly what Casey said, the push notifications. We'll do mailers to folks depending on the base that's being attacked. So if it's people maybe my age or older, you might get a mailer. But really, we tailor the message to the group. And also, we're very specific on what we're seeing from a threat intelligence perspective. But then we use every channel we can. So push notification, mailer, website.
So it's a partnership between keeping your customers and members educated on what's going on out there, working with your full value chain along the way, and making sure there's the right pieces in between, and acting quickly when somebody brings something to your attention. Right? It takes a village.
Yep.
Okay, well, Brian, that was a great question. Thank you so much. All right, so we're gonna close things down. I want to do a shameless plug for a couple of things. So for our credit union attendees, if you have not downloaded our spoof report, which talks a lot about that wave that Casey mentioned in September, of what we're seeing out in the marketplace around fraudsters coming after credit unions, please email us at info@alluresecurity.com. For our bank participants, we are actually going to be launching our spoof report for community and regional banks on Thursday. So again, send us that note there. And if you have not visited our events page on our website, come visit us. We will be at the American Credit Union Cybersecurity Conference in a couple weeks. We'll be at some of the Bankers Association. So come up, talk to us, and let us see if your brand's under threat. We're more than happy to share what we're seeing. I want to thank our panelists today for your time, your candor, and your willingness to share your experiences with folks on this webinar. And I wish you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.